Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Africa 360. I'm your host, Kwangu Liwele. Zambians go to the polls this month for a presidential by-election following the death last year of former President Michael Sata. This week, we explore the dramatic turns this political race has taken and assess the candidates who stand to lead the nation.
One Zambia, One Nation. The motto that united a country and marked independence in 1964. But half a century later, the death of President Michael Sata has arguably plunged the country into the most fractious and divided period in its contemporary political history. With no succession plan in place, Sata's death exposed a power vacuum in the Patriotic Front and, by extension, Zambia. A void that will be filled by presidential by-elections come January 20th. 11 parties will contest the vote, but critics are calling this a two-horse race. After a bitter internal battle between acting President Guy Scott, MP Miles Sampa and Party Secretary General Edgar Lungu, it was the courts that declared Lungu the presidential candidate for the Patriotic Front. The 58-year-old lawyer has held ministerial positions in Home Affairs, Justice and Defence. Lungu's election campaign is riding largely on Sata's legacy. He says everything is on course and the PF must be given the chance to finish the infrastructure and development projects that Sata started.
My brothers and sisters.
Businessman turned politician Hakainde Hichilema, affectionately known as HH, is the presidential candidate for the United Party for National Development. The 52-year-old MBA graduate has sat on a number of boards, including Sun International and the Zambia Chamber of Commerce. His key election promises are to create jobs, boost agriculture by reducing the cost of fertilizer, lift a freeze on wages and deliver a new constitution before the 2016 general election.
President Patrick Manawasa.
Former First Lady and UPND supporter Maureen Wanawasa believes these promises will resonate with the electorate.
We are going to win because our strategy or our vision is that we want to deal with issues that affects an ordinary man and woman in Zambia. There are issues of food, issues of health, issues of unemployment. And our vision in UPND addresses those issues.
The run-up to this month's vote has been marred by accusations of hate speech and tribalism, a tactic one commentator believes will fail to affect voters' choices.
Well, Zambia has been known for being non-tribal with the constitutional theme of One Zambia, One Nation. There has been a lot of intermarriages. And the tribal angle will not work at all, and it hasn't worked in the past, it won't work again, and people are using it because they think voters are fools.
Whoever takes power will have a tough time ahead. Presidential, parliamentary and local government elections are due in 2016, which means any new president will have a very short stay at State House. With rising debt, a weak currency and a delayed constitution, critics fear Zambia's next president is unlikely to achieve much.
It's a tight race to State House and the opposition, UPND, is putting up quite a fight. Let's find out more about the election campaign, and joining me now from Lusaka is UPND campaign manager Dipak Patel. Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Patel. Let's go straight into it. Now, your party, UPND, has a strong tribal label attached to it since its inception in 1998. Matters came to head yesterday at a rally where one of your members, or one of the speakers at the rally, actually said it's about time the party had a Tonga president. How do you respond to this, Mr. Patel?
We have completely dissociated ourselves with the comments made by Mr. Mukombwe. It is not our position to promote any tribalist tendencies in our country. So those comments that were made by Mr. Mukombwe are his own.
In terms of this election, would you see it as a do-or-die situation for the president of your party, Hakainde? If he does lose this election, will the party look beyond him for 2016?
We are focused on the current election, and that is where all our focus lies, is the election on the 20th of January.
We've seen a lot of mudslinging going on during this election, on both sides, actually. An instance, one of the situations was where a bishop in Zambia alleged that your president is a Satanist. And then we've also heard issues about the opposition, rather the PF candidate, who people say is a drunkard. Why has there been so much mudslinging during this election?
It's very unfortunate, a lot of this mudslinging that's going on. There's still some very old-time politics that happens in my country. If you may have noticed, a lot of the new generation of politicians who are on the campaign trail talk about issues and the future and not dwell into this mudslinging and cheap politics. So probably in my country it's going to take a complete generational shift of politicians before we engage in civil campaigns.
So how would you describe this campaign in terms of the media coverage?
Oh, the public broadcast is a shameful cooperation. We have literally had a blackout on the public broadcaster, and they should really be ashamed calling themselves a public broadcaster. We have the matter in court, but we probably won't be resolved before the election.
Now, there are also allegations that your party has actually been paying one of the private TV stations to promote your campaign. How do you respond to this?
Yes, any private company that wants to do business, we have to pay for the advertisement. So yes, when we put commercials, political advertisements on the movie TV, we pay for those commercials. I see nothing wrong. I mean, I'll be very lucky if he gave it to us free of cost.
But I'm not only talking about commercials, but even the editorial line seems to be supporting the UPND, and a lot of people attribute this to the money that your party has pumped into this television station.
No, we have no commercial interest or shareholding in this private movie station, and those who are saying it are probably hallucinating.
Now, in terms of your manifesto, HH has been making promises such as a free education right through to the university level. He's also talked about the minimum salary for civil servants will be about 5,000 kwacha. How feasible is this for a nation like Zambia?
A lot of the promises can be feasible provided you cut out the government waste. For example, right now, we have 150 members of parliament, 8 are nominated, so there are 158, of which the PF has got 62 plus ministers. It's almost half the parliament are ministers. It must be one of the biggest cabinets in Africa, if not in the world. So when you cut down nonsensical waste like that, it's like a gravy train, I think you can free up a lot of money from waste.
If your party wins, I mean, the budget for 2015 has already been passed and legislated by Parliament. So, quite frankly, what changes can be effected before the tripartite elections in 2016 if your government wins?
Yeah, it is possible, because when you go to Parliament, if you wish to make amendments to the budget, you go back to Parliament to make those amendments.
But with only 27 members of Parliament, I mean, how do you hope to get these things passed in Parliament? You've only got 27 UPND members there.
We have enough alliance members to form the majority who are on board campaigning with HH right now. So it gives us the majority that is required.
So far, has it been a conducive environment for you during the run-up to elections?
There's been a lot of violence from the PF on this matter, and there's been some violent acts from some of our over-enthusiastic supporters as well. So, and coverage on public broadcast has been minimal. So these were on one side, the unfair coverage by the public broadcaster, the violence, which is very regrettable. And I think all parties have called for, calm amongst their supporters.
Mr. Patel, thank you very much for speaking to Africa 360.
Thank you very much.
Well, that was UPND campaign manager Dipak Patel speaking to us from Lusaka, Zambia. And don't go away, because after the break, we're in conversation with the Patriotic Front. Welcome back. Before the break, we heard from UPND. Now let's speak to the ruling party's Patriotic Front Member of Parliament, Mr. Given Lubinda. Mr. Lubinda, thanks very much for joining us. Now, for the benefit of our viewers on the continent and beyond, briefly tell us why Zambians should vote for Edgar Lungu. What exactly does he bring to the table, not only for the country, but the continent?
Edgar Lungu is the right person to succeed President Michael Sata for a number of reasons. First, of all the contestants, he is the one with the best credentials insofar as his governance record is concerned, whereas the others may not have participated at any level of governance, neither as councillors nor member of parliament. Edgar Lungu has served this country meticulously over the last 3 years, starting off as Deputy Minister in the Office of the Vice President and quickly rising to the Minister of Home Affairs and then doubling between Ministry of Justice and Ministry of Defense.
Now, a lot of Zambians seem concerned that at one time he was quoted as saying he doesn't currently have a vision for the country, but that he would carry on with President Sata's vision and formulate his own only in 2016 for the general election. Is this an indication that he couldn't care less about whether the current vision is beneficial to Zambians, but will instead wait a year and a half before he makes changes?
I suppose that hadn't he agreed with the vision of the late President Michael Sata, hadn't he agreed with the vision of the Patriotic Front, he would not have served as minister in that government. He would have resigned. The fact that he continued to serve for the 3 years that he served as a minister is an indication of the fact that he's in total agreement with the vision espoused by President Michael Sata and carried by the Patriotic Front.
Now, it's a closely contested election. Now, if the PF loses, will you accept the results?
Certainly. The PF has a very good track record. We have participated in elections several times. We lost elections in 2008, and our cadres almost took the streets. President Michael Sata and the leadership around him restrained the cadres and stopped them from marching on the streets. We accepted and graciously conceded defeat, even if we were not really convinced, but we conceded defeat. And of course, it is the will of the people that is important for us in the Patriotic Front. We are not like some political parties that have said they're not going to accept any results unless those results are in their favor. The will of the people in a democracy is the will of God.
Mr. Lubinda, thank you very much for speaking to Africa 360.
It's been my greatest pleasure being on your program. Thank you very much and have a lovely day.
I'm now joined by a panel of guests to discuss the upcoming Zambia elections. A warm welcome to Mr. Chimwemwe Mwanza, who is a Zambian journalist, and Dr. Martin Rupia from the Program for the Management of Democratic Elections in Africa at the University of South Africa. Gentlemen, thanks very much for joining us. Now, the two things that have characterized this election has been mudslinging and some inter-party violence in Zambia. This is very sad for a country that's been democratic for almost over 20 years now. Dr. Rupia?
I think it reflects the difficulty of political parties to, manage, succession. And you will see that in the 11 candidates that are, contesting the presidential elections in Zambia, Michael Sata himself, before he died, indicated maybe 2 or 3 people. And when he died, 3 members from his own family wanted to be considered. And then it split the party right down the middle as to who was going to succeed. You can also look at MMD. Right at the almost 11th hour, Rupia Banda was convinced to step aside for Nevers to come in. The same thing we see UNIP, very little representation in parliament, and Kaunda's son is the one who is heading it. So the problem for me lies around succession.
Why has succession been badly planned in Zambia?
Look, I think it's not a particular case it's not a particular kind of plot in Zambian politics. I think across the continent, succession has always been an issue. Perhaps there's an unwritten rule among the incumbents that you know, it's kind of difficult for them to pinpoint who is going to be the particular successor. This problem is not unique to Zambia. Until recently, I think we almost did not know who probably was going to be the front runner in Zimbabwe. I think indications are almost clear as to what could happen should anything happen to the incumbent. The same in Mozambique. I think the only one particular country I can say that it's almost a given that once you have the president and you've got a deputy, that the deputy then ascends to the topmost position, I think is South Africa, where the ANC has had that tradition where Mandela, Thabo Mbeki, the deputy to Mandela, succeeded Mandela. And then you had Jacob Zuma, the deputy to Mbeki, succeeding. Although obviously I don't want to say that Ramaphosa might be succeeding Zuma, but what I'm trying to say is that the ANC has almost a clear path to that. But the rest of the continent, I think succession has always been a problem. And this problem is not unique to Zambia.
Now, Dr. Rupia, you did mention the divisiveness in the Patriotic Front. We saw them mid-December, just before Edgar Lungu filed in his nomination papers at the High Court. We saw them say they've reconciled. Guy Scott was at a press conference, and we saw them hugging and saying they've reconciled. Are you buying into that? Because during the campaign now, we've seen most of those people who said they'd reconciled. We haven't seen their faces in the forefront of the campaign.
I get a sense to say they may have come together, because if they lose as a party, then everybody loses. So it may well be people will reconcile, will reconsider, and everybody, I think, loves a winner. If they see Lungu drawing in the crowds, then I think they'll come together. Now, we've seen also a trend. It happens in other African countries, but we're seeing this happening in Zambia as well, where political leaders from other parties are endorsing here it's to do with the two front-runners, which is HH and Edgar Lungu. We've seen the former President Levi Mwanawasa's wife, Maureen Mwanawasa, endorsing HH. We've seen Rupia Banda endorsing Edgar Lungu. Why is it in African politics that people can easily jump ship and start and endorse another party when we don't see that in other countries abroad?
It's a very interesting scenario, Kwangu. I think what you pick up from the looming elections in Zambia is that of strange bedfellows. I, for instance, didn't expect, the former president. I didn't see that one coming. For me, it came like a bolt from the blue that Rupia Banda could be endorsing, would be the person endorsing Edgar Lungu's candidature. By the way, there's nothing wrong with that. But what I'm saying is that this is a man who a few years ago...
There's nothing wrong with that when, I mean, he was fighting Sata of the PF and doesn't believe in their ideologies.
That's what I'm saying. Look, it's his decision. That's what I'm saying. That Rupia has got the right to endorse whichever candidate that he wants. But what I'm saying to you is some endorsements are actually meaningless. If you're going to endorse a candidate and you don't bring a particular voting constituency, a particular voting bloc to that particular candidate, and I think sometimes it might be for greedy or selfish reasons. I'm not so sure whether some of these endorsements are based on merit. You've seen a few candidates who a few months ago wanted to stand on the PF ticket as presidents. All of a sudden they've jumped ship and are supporting the opposition. I don't know whether that support is based on the conviction that they believe that the opposition candidate is the best candidate, or it's based on selfish reasons.
Gentlemen, let's hold on to our thoughts for now. We'll have more analysis from our panel after the break. Don't go away.
Leader that has a roadmap on how to sort out these problems when it comes to agriculture, mining, and the kwacha losing value, and the internal and external debt that we have. Somebody who have a clear vision on how to sort out these problems. Then he is a leader that I would want to rule this country.
These elections actually happening on the 20th of January are actually tripartite, because if once they promise us promises that they don't fulfill, then I don't see them going and people voting for them for the 2016 elections.
Whoever wins these elections has only got about 18 months, to run this country. Whether it's Edgar Lungu that wins or HH that wins, I don't think any one of them has that chance or that opportunity to radically change the fiscal and regulatory framework of the country.
Welcome back to Africa 360 as we discuss Zambia's upcoming presidential by-election. My panel of guests are still with me, but before we return to our discussion, let's take a look back at how Zambians have voted in recent polls. Until recently, the Movement for Multi-Party Democracy, MMD, was the most dominant party in Zambia. They won the 2001 election with 29% of the vote. ushering Levi Mwanawasa into power. The UPND was a very close second. As you can see, the newly formed Patriotic Front managed a paltry 3%. In 2006, the Patriotic Front made massive gains, but they were still outnumbered by an even stronger MMD. They won that election convincingly, and Mwanawasa came to power for a second term. It wasn't for long, however. Mwanawasa died in office, and by-elections were called in 2008. It was a close call for the MMD that year. Rupiah Banda came to power by a very slim margin. And finally, in 2011, the Patriotic Front gained their first presidential victory with 42% of the vote. MMD gained 36%, and the UPND came in third with 18%. Now let's unpack some of those numbers. Now, Chimwemwe, 2015 election has been described as a two-horse race. Why is MMD not a serious contender in this election, considering they've had party structures in place for more than 20 years?
Yeah. For sure, Kwango, this is a two-horse race. Let me put it this way. I think the MMD had a bit of challenges in terms of coming up with a presidential candidate. Remember, their candidate had to be decided by the Supreme Court, and just the same as the PF had all those legal challenges. But what you basically see from the MMD is that tacitly there are indications that they don't have confidence in their leadership. So you have a split of the party in which the other half of members of parliament are supporting HH and the others are supporting the PF, leaving the incumbent, leaving their presidential nominee with almost no one to support. As a matter of fact, if people can't support you within your own house, you obviously don't expect the electorate to even have a second guess or second look at you.
Now, in terms of UPND, HH, the last election, they only got 18% of the vote. Does he need to wave a magic wand for him even to get close enough to winning this election this time round?
I actually think HH has tried to be clever, to not only to raise issues during Sata's reign on key points that he thought Sata was not addressing. He was very much citing Sata, you are not consulting, you are almost running the country unilaterally, etc. And then, of course, he's tried to isolate the issues which he thinks speaks to the constituency, to Zambians. The whole thing about the constitution, economic policy issues, and even employment. So this is a person who is trying to package themselves, having come number 3 in 2011 with 18%, 17.9, thereabouts. Whether or not this is going to connect with the voters, my colleague may have the detail, but I see this as a trend in which he tries, as it were, to rob the incumbent of their clothes and wear them, and then present this to the electorate. And especially what he has said about forming a CDT, a committee, weeks after if he's given the reins of power, that speaks to some of the issues.
Now, Chimwemwe, even if HH was to win, he only has 27 members of parliament. That's going to be a problem for him, isn't it?
Yeah. Look, it depends on how we'll be able to, canvass for support within parliament. I think any Zambian with good intentions, I think, usually gets the goodwill and support of politicians in Zambia. I think that you'll agree.
So we expect even these MMD people have now said they're supporting PF. All of a sudden, HH wins, they'll join they'll support him as well.
Look, I think whoever wins these elections has only got about 18 months, to run this country. Whether it's Edgar Lungu that wins or HH that wins, I don't think any one of them has that chance or that opportunity to radically change the fiscal and regulatory framework of the country that could have a serious overhaul of the economic fundamentals of the country. So all I'm saying is that look, he might not have the numbers, but there is that common will among Zambians, the common denominator, which is we need a constitution.
Just how important are these presidential by-elections for whoever wins? Because they've only got about a year to carry out their programs and their promises and manifestos.
It goes back to the incumbency, the advantages of the one who is running. And I think, if Edgar Lungu were to get it this time for PF, it's important then to use the advantages of the incumbents. We have discussed here how even the public broadcaster is perceived to be pro the ruling party. Now, this is not unique. So it is, to answer your question, it is the advantages of the incumbent.
Zambia has a reputation for being a peace-loving country after 50 years of independence. Now, with these elections coming up, do you foresee that, regardless of whoever wins, peace will prevail?
Actually, we should have started that as the caveat. Zambia has demonstrated to the region and to the continent that you can have peaceful, free and fair elections. And people concede, move away from power, and the other one, comes in. So Zambia, for me, overall, continues to be the democratic leader, on the continent.
Interesting insights into the election in Zambia. Well, that's where we have to leave our discussion today. A big thank you to my guests, Mr. Chimwemwe Mwanza and Dr. Martin Rupia. Well, that's it for this week's edition of Africa 360. If you'd like to add your voice to the discussion on the issues raised, do visit our Facebook page or tweet us at Africa360_ENCA. You can also send your emails to Africa360@enca.com. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.